Hey everybody, Rachel West here, joined by Rays beat reporter Marc Topkin. Mark, I wish we were talking under a little better circumstances here and we were getting ready for a game 7, but sadly that's not the case. The Rays did lose last night. Dodgers are World Series champs, and obviously all the buzz has been about Kevin Cash and his somewhat questionable decision, maybe more than somewhat. Kind of just briefly maybe explain that for people who haven't yet heard his thought process there, and whether or not you think he made the right move.
Sure, Rachel. I mean, the short version is they were in the 6th inning. Blake Snell, the Rays starter, was pitching really well. I mean, some said maybe one of the best games he's ever pitched. Blake said it. Kevin Kiermaier, the center fielder, said it. But with a 1-0 lead and the tying run now on base, Kevin Cash decided that was it. And he went to the bullpen. He went for Nick Anderson. Cash, after the game, explained why he did it. He was very honest for the most part. And he said he made the decision for the right reasons, and that was he felt Nick Anderson was a better matchup against against Mookie Betts at that moment rather than Blake Snell. And I talked to him today, and he has had a tough night dealing with it and everything, but he said he does not consider it a mistake. He still feels like they were making the move for the right reasons. It just didn't work out properly.
Yeah, it makes sense that he's kind of standing by that, and I'm sure it was a tough night for him, and I'm sure he'll have plenty more of those ahead too. So how do you think that is going to affect him moving forward, and maybe his decision-making process in future seasons and in future situations?
I don't think it's actually going to affect Kevin Cash at all in that regard. I mean, he makes a lot of really bold decisions. He makes a lot of decisions that are somewhat unconventional. We've seen him do it time and time again. Most of them work out. They all don't work out, obviously. Sometimes he lucks into it because it doesn't work out initially, and then it works out a different way. But I don't think this is going to make him timid or make him go off script more or stay on script more or anything like that. I think he's going to manage the same, but I do think there's a stigma attached because this happened on such a big stage at the World Series, the biggest stage in the game, and there's lists of managerial mistakes and managerial blunders, and I think that we're going to be Googling that maybe already and certainly in the future, and Kevin Cash's name's going to show up on there, and that's probably a tougher thing in that he doesn't feel like this was a mistake, but because of how it worked out, it's viewed as a mistake.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone wants the Rays to win the World Series next year more than Kevin Cash at this point, just to put this all behind him. And even though his decision is getting most of the focus, fact of the matter is there were other elements that just didn't come together for the Rays, other reasons that they weren't able to piece that one together. The offense being the other big one, not being able to add on throughout the game and come through with runners in scoring position. So is that maybe the storyline that we should be looking into a little bit more right now?
Well, sure. I mean, the first couple innings, they got the home run from Arozarena, but they had 2 guys on in the first, didn't get him in. They had 2 guys on in the second, didn't get him in. And, knowing the Dodgers were going to continue to be changing relievers and essentially using the better ones the later it got, the opportunity was there to score early in the game. I mean, they had Gonsolin on the ropes. They had the Dodgers had a pitcher warming up there, and they couldn't get any more runs in, and that was really, you could argue, as big of a tipping point of the game as anything else when the Rays did not convert more than 1 run in the first inning. So you never know when you're going to get the opportunity. Sometimes you get them early in a game, and when you miss them, you think, oh, you're going to get more, whereas you miss that same opportunity in the 7th or 8th, and we all seize upon it as that was the key to the game. And for the Rays, it's been a battle offensively. They only scored 22 runs in the 6 World Series games, and that's not really enough.
Yeah, offensive struggles will definitely be something I'm sure they'll be focusing on moving into next year. But now we can kind of reflect on this past year, and nobody wants to lose, obviously. Blake Snell last night saying losing sucks. I hope these guys are motivated to come out stronger next year. But reflecting on it now, just how big of a deal was it for this organization to be in this position?
Yeah, it's obviously a very positive development for the core of players that have been here. They went from 90 wins and missing the playoffs in 2018 to 96 wins, right, or 97 wins, and making the playoffs in 2019, getting, past the wild card game, getting to the division series, taking the Astros to 5 games, losing there, coming back this year, obviously, with the pandemic delayed and abbreviated season, but posting the best record in the American League, and then getting further. I mean, that was, I think, the measuring stick really was getting further than last year. So once they beat the Yankees, they had, made that step that they wanted to make. They took that improvement. Then the fact that they beat the Astros and got to the World Series and, got to 6 games. I mean, if you show up in the World Series and you get swept, you leave feeling pretty bad about yourselves. But, once they get over the sting of this, there's a lot to be gained from them getting this far. And, I think, as you said, given the reaction to Kevin Cash's decision last night, the best way to correct that and make that not the Kevin Cash World Series narrative is to go out and win it next year.
Yeah, and that'll definitely be the goal. And because this was such a terrible way to go out, kind of, how much more motivating is that going to be for them coming into next year?
Yeah, I think that'll be the theme. I mean, we talked this year in the first spring training back in Port Charlotte in February and March, how motivated they were because of the loss to the Astros in the division series last year. So, now you get to the point where you're talking about being the runner-up, being the second-place finisher, being the team that lost the World Series. So I think it'll be something that we'll talk a lot about in February and March, and it'll be that, that's what's driving them is to finally, get over the hump. They've been there in 2008, obviously a different group. Now they've been there in 2020, but 2 times to the World Series, no wins yet. And, it'll almost be a Yankees-like thing. Like, you got to win the World Series to make the season count kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, hopefully, I'm sure they'll try to pull what LA just did. And hopefully it won't take them 3 times in the World Series to finally get that championship. And they can be right back there next year, hopefully winning it all. But we'll see how next season goes. But unfortunately, that's it for this year. And Marc, thank you for joining me every day throughout this series and having a little chat between the games or before the games. Appreciate the time. I know you said it was your highlight of your day, so thank you for that.
I knew you were going to remember I said that.
I'm never going to let you live it down.
It is the highlight of my day every day, Rachel, just so you know that.
I'm sure there'll be some great off-season tidbits coming from you on the Rays. And just in the next couple of days, the Rays will be making some moves, right?
Yeah, they've got, you don't really have much time to rest. Win or lose the World Series, within 5 days of the end of the series, they have to decide on player options. And they've got one on Charlie Morton for $15 million, and they've got one on Mike Zunino for $4.5 million. So they've got to decide on both of those. I mean, I think they're both going to get a lot of consideration. I think they're both, in their own ways, kind of tough calls. But given all the financial, losses that teams sustained this year, I think, salaries are going to be kind of held in check. So, taking those options, which were agreed to a couple of years ago, maybe there's a way to negotiate some lower prices.
Mm-hmm. It will definitely be interesting to see how they handle all of that. But for now, everyone, no more games to follow along with Marc for, but do check out TampaBay.com for all of your off-season coverage. And we'll see you back here next season.